Hello and welcome to There's No Business Like, a podcast where friends and industry colleagues explore topics and interview leaders in our industry of professional theatrical touring.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to There's No Business Like. I'm Brian Zelmer, Director of KU Presents at Kutztown University, and I'm here with my friends, Danielle from the Alden in Virginia. What's going on in Virginia, Danielle?
Hey, guess what? It is April and it's 80 degrees today.
Wow. Do you guys have the, because you're close to Washington, D.C., don't you guys have the cherry blossoms coming soon?
We do. We have the cherry blossoms are in full, I think they're actually a little bit past full peak at this moment. It's getting into allergy season. We don't necessarily have like a spring season. We have more like an allergy season. It hasn't quite hit the pollination yet though, which is like literally you open the door one day and there's just yellow pollen everywhere. Everywhere. Like you can't get into your car without touching
I know,
it.
believe me, I suffer from that too here in Pennsylvania. Speaking of seasons, we also have Josh Benson from the Marion Cultural and Civic Center in Marion, Illinois, who is under a tornado watch because it's tornado season. What's going on, Josh?
It is tornado season. We're the Southern Illinois area. I mean, we get a lot of stuff coming Oklahoma through Missouri and like right into our area, like straight through Tornado Alley. It's an interesting time. Luckily, most of the time, tornado watches and warnings don't quite line up with whenever we've got 1,000 people in the theater. But one of the most important things there is for preparation and having a plan going into those times for shelter in place and where are the safe places in the building that we can stuff 1,000 people.
I think this is a great episode topic is emergency preparedness and planning, but obviously we don't have time to go into it too much today. I do want to introduce Kevin Maynard, who's also on the podcast, also from Illinois, but bordering the Iowa border as well. And he was recently in a tornado watch, but now I think you have hail, right? Where you are in the Quad Cities?
Yeah, so Kevin Maynard, Quad City Arts. We pretty much right now are just dodging hail and tornadoes and thunderstorms. It's a nice gray, rainy, just, super exciting. Normally we're not in like Tornado Alley, but things seem to be shifting. So this is becoming a bit more normal. So.
Gotcha. And last but certainly not least is Katie Miller, who's probably going to have a hard time talking about Michigan. I know she doesn't know that much about it. And that was sarcasm in case you're just tuning in, because Katie is definitely a super cheerleader for the state. Katie, what's going on in Midland, Michigan?
Hey, everyone. Katie Miller with the Midland Center for the Arts. And we are having thunder and lightning right now. So it's just great weather all the way around. I think the storms that Kevin had yesterday actually came up to Midland. So thank you, Kevin. Appreciate that.
Yeah, it's his fault.
We are really tired of the gray and the rain here in Midland, and we are really hoping that April showers bring May flowers very soon, and some sunshine.
And just to clarify, we're recording this the first week of April.
Yes.
So
guys,
yeah.
I have a question for all of you. Have you, we're all involved in venues or with producing shows and things. Have you ever brought a family member or a very close friend to work with you to spend like a day with you, either working on something or a show?
Yeah, when I was running the theater in Galesburg, my family would come to shows quite often. Mostly because I was killing it in the programming department. So
You were.
but they would be able to come and see, kind of what I do, do the opening announcement stuff. But honestly, the most fun was when my nieces and nephews came, because they would always want to, go up on stage and then be able to show them, the fly rail and how everything worked, be able to, dressing rooms, because for them, it was the first time for them to be in a theater and in a theater of that sort of magnitude and just like how beautiful that space was. So that was always really cool, being able to show them kind of that backstage behind the scenes aspect for them, because just seeing their wonder was amazing.
For me, like my daughter has hung out at the theater quite often. I've got a cabinet in my office that's got coloring books and crayons and everything else in it, and a random iPad, and I want to say my daughter was 3. It was in like 2000. It was December of 2019. I lost her to the tour of Nutcracker that was in that day. She hung out with the tour manager all day and the stage manager, and like they put her in all of the costumes and let her dance around with the swords and the rat heads and everything else. And she just had a great time of it. She's 7 now, and her school, the entire second grade class from her school are actually coming to the theater for a behind the scenes tour. She just asked me this morning, whenever they come, if she can help guide the tour, because she knows everything so well. And so
Nice.
I'm really looking forward to that.
Well, you sometimes have to bring my son with me to work. So he comes as a patron, of course. So we see lots of family shows together and music. And last season we had Don't Let the Pigeon Drive the Bus, which was like such an amazing moment to bring him to that. And we've seen the Okie Dokie Brothers and lots of other concerts and things together. But sometimes he does have to come with me to like work a show too. So he'll go backstage with me to meet the artists. Or I will like rush into the office like I did a few weeks ago on a snow day to have to go give a presentation at a board meeting and just be like, oh, hey, coworkers, who wants to babysit for 20 minutes? So shout out to my coworkers, especially Alex and Christopher, who recently just became impromptu babysitters in the cubicle farm, watching my son for me while I like ran upstairs, gave a presentation to the board, and then scooped him up and took him home for dinner. So as a working parent, that's just kind of like the way things are sometimes.
I love the terminology cubicle farm. That's fabulous.
At the very beginning of my career, when I was working at Wolf Trap, I worked in the arts and education department, and I helped teaching artists get into classrooms and do workshops. So my like arts programming was residencies and workshops primarily. And for people outside of the arts, those things are just like, they just don't quite have a solid enough definition that really makes sense of like, but what do you do? And so I was always like looking for opportunities that were like open to the public that I could like just bring somebody along. I started this really awesome partnership with the Fairfax County Libraries, where we would do like a miniature version of our infant and toddler residency workshops with families. And so at one point I got to bring my parents just to like an more or less open for the public. I was observing, and I brought them along so that they could like see what it's like when an artist is like so engaged with a group of children and families, and just how, even though it seems so small, how deep that connection is and like how important that work is. And also just like having kids that are in like the most ideal age for like youth performance has been such a wonderful like benefit of the job, that like I feel like I'm in a stage right now, like Katie was saying, that it's just so fun to just like expose them to so many different kinds of artists and to hear their like feedback about the show and about the experience.
Nice. Just like all of you, I've had plenty of opportunities to do that with my parents and with some friends over the years. But when my oldest son, who's now 19, was very young, toddler age, just like Katie's and Danielle's children, he used to come to work with me quite a bit because we did a lot of family and youth programming. And he loved working with me. Like he would spend the whole day with me, come and do all the running around and setting everything up. And the artists were always so gracious with him. But I remember his favorite was a magician who's now going by his real name, Justin Willman, who's on TV and stuff. But back then he used to go by Just Incredible, and he would come to our venue twice a year, and they took a liking to each other, and they were like buddies. And after he was school age, was going to school and couldn't come to the show with me, and Justin came to do a show. He's like, "Hey, where's your little helper?" And so I was like, "Yeah, unfortunately, he's in school now." So, but that was always a fun memory for me, and I'm glad that we got to do that. I bring that up because I interviewed Jonathan Burns this week, and he talks about a really cool perk about an experience he just recently got to do with his family. And so take a listen, and we'll see you on the other side.
Hi, I'm Jonathan Burns, and I'm the life of the party. Cue the confetti.
Hi, Jonathan. Welcome, and thanks for taking time to speak with us today.
Of course.
Can you just maybe, I know you wear several different hats. You're a comedian, a magician, a contortionist. Can you maybe just, is there like a term that you use to comprise all of that, or do you have to list them?
There's not a term. It's really, it's hard for me to explain it sometimes. It is definitely a variety show. People aren't as familiar with variety performer as they might have been during like the Ed Sullivan days, or
even going all the way back to vaudeville, right?
Yeah, exactly. So like, yeah, the vaudeville days, or like Ed Sullivan, you would know what a variety performer is. But I'm a comedian that uses a lot of different techniques and ideas and arts to make the audience laugh. So I started off as a magician when I was a teenager, and my little birthday party magic show has kind of rolled into this one of a kind, unique comedy show, which I'm now calling Life of the Party. Because it is kind of like a party. There's confetti and there's magic, a lot of audience interaction, and a lot of laughs.
That's awesome. So you started to touch on how you learned magic first. Can you maybe just give us the highlight reel of your professional journey?
Yeah, sure. I went to a magic shop. Well, first I was a kind of a hammy kid, loved to get attention. I would do leg over the head at parties or armpit farts. That was kind of like my first performing arts.
How old were you when you first discovered how flexible you are?
I think I was pretty young. Like I would do weird bendy tricks. It was really a party trick at that time, where like my parents were like, "Hey, do your thing," you know? And they would like, and their friends would laugh at me, or my friends would laugh at me doing stuff at birthday parties or whatever. And then a family friend took me to a magic shop, which I didn't know existed, and I learned my first magic trick. I think the first one I learned was I turned 4 nickels into 4 dimes. It was like
where was the magic shop?
It was in Windber, Pennsylvania. So like I grew up in Johnstown, Pennsylvania, a little town in Western Pennsylvania, and Windber's even smaller. But I went to this place and it seemed so magical, and so like there was all these amazing things on the wall, and like the guy behind the counter could do all these incredible things. And then looking back, I realized it was just like a closet in a pizza shop that some guy had put some magic tricks in. But this guy, Bryan Fauché, was the man who opened it. And he was actually a student at Penn State. He was studying business and marketing. And instead of getting an internship for the summer, he decided he was going to he was always interested in magic. So he opened a magic shop. And I went in there and I went like every week and bought a new trick and kind of had my little bag of tricks. I bought a briefcase, kept them all inside there, and I would show them to kind of anyone who wanted to see them. And then eventually somebody saw them and said, "Hey, you want to perform at my daughter's birthday?" And I said, "Oh, okay." I didn't know what I was doing. I borrowed a bunch of scarves from my grandmother, tied them together, stuck them up my sleeve, and just kind of did what a magic show that I thought what a magic show should look like. And I started getting asked to do more and more shows. And so since I was 13, I've never had to get a quote unquote real job.
Wow. So were your parents always supportive in that track, or did they try to steer you to like a fallback job, or, you know?
Yeah, no, they were definitely supportive. Like they were the ones who drove me to the magic show, or even to the magic shop and to magic shows. I'd get hired somewhere and they would be the one to drop me off and pick me up after Billy's, 12th birthday or whatever. So they were very supportive in that sense. And then I went to school. I went to Millersville University in Lancaster, and I studied art education. So I think I never, like, my summers were spent doing shows and performing at camps and birthday parties and kind of wherever they would have me. Mm-hmm. And when I graduated, I told them, I think I'm going to try this full time. And my mom's like she was a little nervous, a little hesitant, never came out and said no, but was like, maybe you could do it on the side. And I was like, I think I can make this work. And I have made it work since then. So they were pleasantly surprised.
When did comedy come into the picture, or was that something that just got introduced as you were doing magic?
I think as I was doing it, I tried to do like serious magic tricks, and the David Copperfield one eyebrow up, really like serious kind of magic show at times, and people would laugh. Like, I think my face isn't built for serious magic. And I loved comedy. Like, I was always drawn to like Pee Wee Herman, Weird Al, Steve Martin. Those were like my guys growing up. And then later to like the Kids in the Hall and Saturday Night Live. And I just kind of was just drawn to funny people. And so I just started adding in more jokes. And my first magic shows were I would see magicians on TV and basically take whatever they did and put it in my act. And someone had to kind of like make me realize when I was like probably about 17, 18, I met somebody at a magic convention, which they have, which we were surprised to have, but magicians from all over the world will gather in different cities and kind of share new tricks, and you get to see performances and stuff like that. But this guy Ryan told me, hey, you should keep a notebook and just put your own original ideas in there. And I was like, oh, that's a good thought. So I started doing that, and that really changed everything from being just like a completely stolen act as a teenager to becoming something that was only unique that I could only do.
Wow. So it sounds like this person was sort of a mentor. Does that happen at these gatherings? Do people
It does.
mentor
I mean,
others?
Ryan, I think, is only like a year or two older than me, so it wasn't like this old magician sage, like 80-year-old guy. You keep a notebook. He was just, hey, you should keep a notebook, and it was just like an off the cuff thing. I don't think he would ever like think about it as he was like the one who changed everything, but it really did change a lot for me. Like, I'm happy that I did take, like, I think when I was a teenager, it was nice that I like what I took and did worked for me at the time. And I sort of learned from it's almost like I feel like an apprentice working with a painter, like in the Renaissance. You look at how they did it, and then you can form your own technique from that. So I kind of was able to jump in and get a lot of performing experience early on, and then take that advice that I got from them, stole from them, and kind of combine it all together and make my own thing.
That's perfect that you mentioned apprentice, because when I speak to a lot of comedians and they talk about the same thing, it's like they're learning their craft, and a lot of them start by copying, comics that they knew and stuff, and then they learn to be themselves. And so it's like they then introduce the craft into being themselves, and that's
I didn't know I was learning from them at the time, but looking back, I'm like, oh yeah, like even jokes I write now, sometimes I can hear somebody else's voice in it. I think if I would tell it to them, they wouldn't hear it that way, but I kind of know the origin of like, oh, that's something that David Letterman said one night or whatever. Like, I was listening to an interview with Jimmy Fallon recently, and he mentioned some of his jokes in his monologue. Every once in a while he'll deliver a punchline. He's like, oh, that was very Brian Regan of me, or whatever. Like he kind of can pick out where that came from. But yeah, like, so now I think it's hidden enough. I have enough influences from enough, like, a wide range of people that they wouldn't know that in my mind I took that thing or used it for my purposes.
Now, you mentioned your first trick, turning the nickels into dimes or quarters into dimes. I don't remember what coins.
Yeah, nickels into dimes. Yeah, you want to make money, not lose it.
Do you remember the first trick or joke or one of your moves that you actually got paid for the first time?
Ooh, I feel like that first birthday party magic show, I think they may have paid me $20, and I was like, this is amazing. Like I couldn't believe I got paid to do something that I just liked doing.
That's awesome.
For free. Yeah. So that was a big thing. And I auditioned to be a street performer in Baltimore at the Inner Harbor. So they have like a natural amphitheater at the harbor area there. And I had seen performers there when I was younger and decided, oh, I'm going to take my little show down there and see how that goes. And that was, they had like an audition, and I auditioned for that. And I remember it going really well. Like they had a crowd gathered, and I did my show, and I did like, 10 minutes of my show or whatever, and it went well. And then I finally got like my first time slot down there. They're like, here's 3 hours, you can do your thing.
Nice.
And I bombed. It was terrible.
Oh no.
It was so hard. I couldn't get people to stay.
Bombing is so important. So many comedians say they're so glad that they bombed. But what's interesting is most people will have that experience and then they'll be like, oop, that's not for me. But what brings you back? Like, what's that special something that you and comedians have that say, okay, I bombed, but I'm going to go back and do it again?
I don't know what it was in me here, because like I made less money than it cost to park that day. Like like I lost money, like just struggling and bombing, so I paid money to feel terrible. But my girlfriend at the time, now wife, was with me, and she was like, well, at least we don't have to do that again. And she was like, it was so bad. And then I was like, I think I'm going back. And there was just something in me that like, I got to figure this out. Like it went well the first time. Why didn't it go well the second time? And then I just by repetition, by going down there every week or a couple times a week, I got way better very fast, because most places I was performing was like, okay, you're in a nursing home. These people aren't allowed to leave. They have to sit. We put them in this room. You're going to do your thing. They,
Right,
you know, no matter what. Or a birthday party, like you're at this party, you know, like you have to stick around and watch this guy and then do the next thing. So this was the first time where people could, like, they had the choice to stop and watch me or even stay. So I had to figure out ways to kind of draw them in and keep them interested. And there's like a lot of street performer tricks that are out there, like techniques that, you know, oh, you use a chainsaw or you make loud noise or you use fire or whatever. And I tried to avoid a lot of those pitfalls just because I saw them work for a lot of other people. But there was something in me that it was like, I think went back to like trying to be unique and keeping a notebook and having my own original ideas, that I didn't want to just rely on those same things and have a show like everyone else. I really wanted to kind of make something that only I could do.
So you're honing your craft, you're getting the experience working with audiences and putting your act and show together, making it unique and yours. How do you then get to the point where you're making a career at this?
It was kind of nice that I started when I was a teenager, because I think it was slow goings from then. Like it was definitely building and building and building as it went, and more people would hear about me. But I think it was also good that I started when I was a broke college student, because I didn't need to have much to survive. Like I lived in an apartment, and I know I needed X amount of dollars each month or whatever. But if I was to start now, I have 2 kids, I have a house, mortgage, wife. Like there's a lot more pressure on me to deliver. Yeah, so I think it was one of those. I was happy that I started early and jumped right into it. I think sometimes people wait to find the right moment to do the things, but I think the best way to do it sometimes is just to kind of
roll up your sleeves and get out there.
Yeah, I think that at least that worked for me. I looking back, I didn't think of it like that at the time, but looking back, I feel like that was a huge advantage of being able to start as soon as I.
So I'm gonna repeat the question though. So like,
yeah,
you just kept doing more and more, and you said it was a slow build. But at what point did you eventually catch the eye of an agent? Did you just start getting a big network of venues? Or
a lot of it was me. Like I was just even in college, I started my own agency. I called myself Big Name Entertainment, and I even like I had a dorm room like where we had a voicemail box with multiple things, and there was a voicemail for Big Name Entertainment, and I had like roommates answering Big Name Entertainment. So like I tried to make the perception that it was kind of maybe bigger than just me doing magic shows or whatever. And I would book myself, and I would book other acts and things too. So I was kind of just entrepreneurial in that way. I was just I didn't know how to get an agent, so I sort of started my own agency.
That's great.
And then and I know after I graduated college, I wanted to perform at colleges, because I was doing shows on my campus and a few other campuses, and just decided that there's a thing called NACA, the National Association for Campus Activities. It's a bit of an investment. I took a loan from my grandmother at the time just to be able to go. And the first year I went, I was able to like break even.
That's actually really good, because it takes usually, we hear from talking to so many other people, it takes maybe about 3 years or so for people that are new to kind of break their way in, because so many people have their seasons, like next season's already booked, so they're looking for the following season. So breaking even is actually a success, I think, that first year.
Thanks. Well, yeah, it felt good at the time, actually. Like I was like, okay, like it wasn't a total disaster. I didn't go further in the hole. And I could pay my mom back. But so I just started doing that. And then I was really cold calling venues. I was kind of doing everything. The internet was definitely useful at that time, but not like today. There was no LinkedIn at the time, or I remember having names of colleges on note cards, and just like, when did I call them? I was making notes that way.
So just break down like going to NACA, the jobs you got going to NACA versus the cold calling. I'm sure the cold calling was a lot harder because they don't see you. They can't interact with you in a face-to-face.
It was. I mean, there was a few, like I remember getting I made a call to a school and was like, "Hey, I've got a great magic show," and she's like, "We don't have magic shows." Click, and I was just like,
Oh,
"Okay," you know. So I had to get better at that. And there was other schools that I did call that they were like, "Oh, great, can you send us more information?" And then I would send them my packet or whatever, or "Hey, we have an event coming up next week. You were interested," like so. So there was a few that were easy successes, which was great. Um, but I got hung up or didn't no reply for a lot of things too. So I just sort of started I really did start from the bottom of just like, will you hire me?
you're acting as your own agent, and it sounds like you're doing a lot of the right things off the get-go. But how did you learn about some of the other business, such as like how to price your fee and how to put your rider, or what you needed at the show provided by the venue? And
So I remember like starting out and not knowing what an XLR cable was, or like what a rider meant or anything like that. I know once I found out those things, like it was like, okay, wait, I got to put that together, or like, oh, can you have can you send us like your inputs or whatever? I'm like, sure, like I was figuring that out. So I think it's just kind of little by little I picked up more knowledge along the way. And sometimes I did jump into maybe a venue that I wasn't quite ready for. But the next time I went to a venue like that, it made me better. And I've kind of performed in any situation, especially with colleges. Sometimes you'll be in a performing arts center, like with you guys, like a beautiful venue, you have techs and you have people working with you. And other times they're like, okay, you can hook it into this boom box and you'll be by the soda machine. And you're like, okay. So I think all those experiences have helped. So that's like if people want to ask me, like people come up and ask me about performing, I often tell them like just do it as much as you can, because
Mhm.
all the experiences I've had things go right, and a lot of shows I've had way more things go wrong, and I sort of in that notebook I write those things down, or I make a mental note for next time. Oh, this is how I'll deal with this in the future, or oh, this audience is a little sleepy. Do you need to do this, or they're maybe too loud and riotous. You got to adjust that way too. So I think it was just experience was the biggest part for me.
So you're doing the college circuit.
Yeah.
How do you get into doing some of the television that you started doing with Penn and Teller's Fool Us and America's Got Talent? And I know you were on the Late Late Show with James Corden. I think even earlier you were on David Letterman.
Yeah. And Jay Leno was the first.
Okay, yeah. Tell us how that happened.
That one. So Jay Leno, it's sort of a strange story. A friend of mine who was a performer, he did a segment on the Tonight Show. It was like another kind of sort of stupid human tricksy segment. It was called Don't Try This at Home. And so he was a magician juggler. He did that segment. He really liked it, and then got to be friends with the producer of the show, and eventually left magic and juggling and went to work in television. So it was sort of a weird chance thing that he was then working on with Jay Leno, and then this segment came up, and he basically called me. He was like, "Hey, do you have anything fun for this?" And I was like, "Oh, I have this trick where I remove my underwear without taking my pants off." And he's like, "Come on, come to Los Angeles, basically."
Perfect.
So that was like just from meeting people and knowing the right person. And then some of the other ones, like with Letterman, they used to hold like open auditions for stupid human tricks, but I would just send in a tape with an idea, and then they liked it, and actually for that segment they bring 6 people in and narrow it down to 3 right before the taping.
Oh, wow.
So there was a chance like I wasn't even going to get on, but luckily we got on doing our trick, which was a big thrill. I was a big Letterman fan.
Well, and then you can use that for your resume or for your marketing.
Yeah, no,
materials.
it's really great because it's a oh look, I even have my Letterman mug right here.
Nice.
My gift for being there. Yeah, so that one was just like again trying, like I made an audition tape and sent it off to them, and that's kind of how I think a lot of these work. Sometimes they are looking for segments. and you can go on their website and find out what they're looking for and send in things. And some other ones were just because of these other TV segments or people seeing me live, they kind of reached out and said, "Hey, do you have any ideas for this particular thing?" Fool Us was another one. I had some friends who were on the show, and there's sort of an audition process with that too, where you send in a tape and then they choose who's going to be on that season. So I was lucky that the first time I was on with Penn and Teller was a trick that I was doing in the show, my cheese across trick, where
Yes.
it's a magic trick with cheese, and it's something that I had done hundreds of times, knew really like inside and out, and had to make a few adjustments for TV, but went really well. And it's actually now it's on the YouTube page, and a lot of people have seen it, which is great.
I think that I highly encourage everyone to go look that one up, because what's amazing, I love watching Penn and Teller when they are really loving the entertainer. Like, of course, you didn't trick them or fool them, but they loved your delivery, your style. Like, you could just see it in their faces. And that, to me, I don't know, as a presenter, that I'm always looking at the audiences. And in this case, I'm looking at Penn and Teller as the audience and just admiring your showmanship. And
oh, thanks. Yeah, that was sort of the idea going in. I knew the part of the show is to fool them. I knew that wasn't going to be my thing. My magic tricks are definitely more based in comedy and being silly. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to go and entertain them as best I can. And because of that, they've had me back on Fool Us another time, and then I did another special with them a few years ago as well with my family, and when we were having a tea party, which is also available on YouTube. You could look up all those things, but yeah. So I think it's some of it's just going and doing. If you can do a good job or make a splash, like on one show, it definitely helps with the next one.
so those things really help with your electronic press kit, or however you want to promote yourself and market yourself. You mentioned a few minutes ago about having to alter your trick for television. Can you maybe just touch on what are the different preparations you have to make for doing a TV gig versus a live stage gig?
Yeah, it is different for sure. I mean, you're performing. I was performing for the live audience in the room, but one of the main things I had to adjust was the time. The trick usually lasts around 10 minutes, and they wanted it a lot a lot shorter than that. I think we ended up around 6-ish.
Is that something you work out with them, or they tell you this is how long it needs to be?
Yeah, I worked out. So like before you arrive, you work with some producers on the show, and they try to help you a bit with organizing that. And then once you're there, you do the audition, like you do not really an audition, I guess a run through in the room for some of the other people behind the scenes. Like there's magicians behind the scenes who have to know how your trick's done, and then there's also other people there just saying like, oh, make sure you stand here with the blocking, or the cameras are going to be here, here. Like they kind of just give you a little bit of a rundown of how it's going to go. And then the other big part of it was when I'm doing it on stage, I use like music, and there's a lot of popular songs that wouldn't be cleared for TV.
Right.
So I had to come up with something to kind of fill those spaces. And in the routine, I use a lot of wind chimes. I pull them out of all
Which is
across my
hilarious.
body.
Yeah.
So that was the first time I ever did it. Was actually on TV. Was the first time I ever used the wind chimes live. So like the days leading up to it, I was in my Vegas hotel room trying to figure out where I'm sticking wind chimes and what I'm gonna do. And I was even trying to write jokes to punch up what I had already done hundreds of times. So I'm writing jokes the morning of my taping. So like up to the moment I did it, I was still kind of working it all out. And that was the case with that one. And then actually I did my second appearance with him too. I did an escape from a couch wearing a straitjacket. So they folded me up in a pull-out couch. And that one I had never done before. It was just an idea in my notebook
Oh my
for
gosh.
years. And the first time I did it was for Penn and Teller on their TV show. So that one was a little bit more nerve-wracking, where I'm like, I hope this all works out. There was a lot of moving parts, and it was a little bit more script to remember, and jokes, again, writing them till the morning of. And so it was you have like one shot at it. So I think that's the scariest part with the TV thing. You just need to make sure that you know all the the ins and outs of how it's going to go, and hopefully it all works the way you want it to.
I just think it's really cool because now the wind chimes have become part of your act because it worked so well. And it's just funny how, whatever that saying is about innovation, how you needed to fill something and just did this thing. And now it's a hilarious part of your act, I think.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. I've been trying to incorporate it more because every once in a while before I was using them in the show and people had seen the Penn and Tuck thing, they were like, where were the wind chimes? And because I have them all over my body, I can't like where the cheese trick is in my full show. I'd be like clinking the whole time walking around. So I use them in a different way, as you saw at Kutztown recently. And it's fun for me, and I keep adding more and more and making it more and more ridiculous.
Now you mentioned you have a wife and 2 children, and I know a lot of people went through the pandemic and realized that the touring life was not really what they wanted to do anymore. They wanted to spend more time with their family. And I'm just curious, did the pandemic have any effect like that on you? How do you balance that quote unquote work-life balance,
Yeah, it is tough. I know I just got back from a cruise. I work with Disney Cruise Lines, and this week I was able to actually take my family with me. So there's some perks to the job. Where they got to travel from first they did a show in Iowa, so they got to travel to Iowa, and then to San Diego, and then we got on the cruise ship for a week and went to Mexico, and so that was the best, like when I can show up, I can do my job, and also they get to enjoy the perks of it. And like over the summer, we were in Europe for a month where I was performing at shows in Spain and in Greece. So they were able to travel with me then. And my wife's a teacher, so she's off in the summer. So we try to take advantage of that when we can. But there are times when I'm gone for a month at a time and don't get to see them. And it's really tough. FaceTime and just trying to stay in touch, me sending postcards and like us sending, texts and stuff back and forth are huge. But for all the bad sides of it, there are some really nice parts of it too.
So Jonathan, I have a time machine that I invented some time ago, and I guess it's irrelevant when I invented it, but I want to take you back to when you were doing that street performing, and that second show had just happened and you bombed, and I'm going to give you a minute or two to maybe talk to yourself, either to kind of give yourself some advice that you needed then, or even just some encouragement. What would you say to yourself at that time?
All right, Jonathan, take a knee. Yes, I'm from the future. Forget about all of it. Okay. You're still handsome. Yes, I know. All right. Well, it's all going to get better. All right. I know this is terrible right now. You don't have enough money to pay for parking. However, you're gonna struggle here for a while, but you are gonna get better. You're gonna see results, and someday you'll get to be on There's No Business Like podcast.
Fantastic. Right? Would you give yourself a few bucks to pay for the parking too?
That's right. You see that? Oh man, I should have. Here's $5 to pay for parking.
Okay, we're almost out of time, but I just want to know, is there any kind of advice you'd have for someone who's maybe a college student or somebody who's just entering the field as an artist like you, or even just some other part of the industry as they're starting out? Is there something that you learned that would have been helpful in the beginning to have?
Yeah, get as much experience as possible. Like however you can do it, wherever you're at, whatever level, just to kind of be involved, I think is huge. Like if you want to be on stage, get as much stage time as you can. If you want to be behind the scenes, volunteer, take all those jobs early on, and you're just going to you're going to learn so much just from doing, and learn as you go. That's going to pay off in the end for sure. So get that experience.
Great advice. I always ask this as my last question. What do you like most about working in this industry today?
Well, I still like, it's basically why I started in the beginning. I like people laughing at me. So that's what there's nothing better feeling than like writing a new bit and it works on stage. I tried out some new stuff on that cruise I was on this past week, where we were in Mexico and we did I did different Spanish translations about things that happened at port, and it got a huge laugh. And there's nothing better when you're like, you have an idea, you put it on stage and it works. It's like, like it's the best.
Jonathan, I really enjoyed talking with you today, and I loved working with you and getting to see your show. I wish you all the best, and I want to just thank you for taking this time with us today.
Thank you so much. There's no business like.
Thanks, Jonathan.
Thank you.
So what I find so fascinating whenever we talk to magicians is that their origin story is always in a magic shop. And I want to know who these people are running these magic shops, and please tell me that they are still out there, because like these people are the backbone of society.
So Joshua Kane took me to a magic shop in New York at APAP this year. And it's the same one that Max, the amazing Max Darwin, was at the day before. He's like, hey, we're going to go here. I'm like, all right, cool. And so we walk into this just single doorway. It's just like this industrial hallway, and then there's a single elevator. And he's like, we're going 6th floor. And I'm like, okay. And we go up to the 6th floor, and it's another industrial hallway. I'm like, there's no signage, there's nothing. And I'm like, what is going on? And like, we go down this hallway, and then all of a sudden it opens up to this magic shop that, like, you open the door, and all of a sudden there's like all these wooden like oak shelves, and and I'm like, what in the world? Like, you have to know where it is to find it. It was a really cool experience, because it is like that magical feeling, because there's magic tricks everywhere. Like, the entire room is filled with magic tricks and books about how to do these magic tricks. And I'm like, all right, this is cool, Zach.
I also just love that line, cue the confetti. Like, just starting that out. That is now how I'm going to introduce myself on like all things. Kevin Maynard, cue the confetti. So just full disclosure, Jonathan, I am stealing that. So,
Well, get yourself a little notebook and write that down.
Yeah, I loved his notebook idea, because it helped him like become a better artist, and he was, using that notebook. I thought that was a really cool idea.
I love that he got into the industry initially through armpit farts. Like, that's my first origin story that I've heard that starts with armpit farts, and I think
and
that's
putting his
fabulous.
leg over his head.
Yeah, but the emphasis is really on the armpit farts. But seriously, there was reference to this that in a previous episode, that there really should be more respect for children's performers that perform like at birthday parties and stuff like that, because that is often the first like entry point into performing arts for little kids, is a magician at a birthday party or something like that. And that's where he started and has developed since and built his career. And I love that it all sources from armpit farts.
Well, and Josh, I was thinking, listening through like the importance of the college touring circuit and how he really used that as a tool to build his show, build his career. He was an agent, like taking phone calls out of his dorm room and like, booking himself. I love that anecdote about like using his roommates as his employees to like, answer the phone. But I think, to your point, talking about, children's entertainment, birthday parties, that college touring circuit is super important as well for emerging artists and developing their careers and developing those skills, in terms of, like he was talking about, like every environment is different. You never really know what you're going to get. And then on the flip side of that, we've heard this from a few other folks, being a college student, that is a great way to learn about the industry and how to book shows and work with artists. So, all those arts admin students who are out there, like, that's a great opportunity, is working with your college entertainment board or student board, whatever that is at your college or university. And I don't think we think about those opportunities, or like how you can really utilize both sides of that coin to launch a career. And I just really love that reminder from Jonathan about how those opportunities can be really valuable.
And that's the same with like going and doing an event, and like he was talking about embalming, right? Like, that's not just an experience that happened and then you forget about it. Like, that is a learning experience that like you use as a foundation. So it's like, you can look at it as a fail, or you can look at it as, well, now I learned what not to do. And, the same thing with all of those birthday parties, the more you get in front of kids, like the more that you can keep an audience. The same way with like college students on a Friday night. If you can keep college students after class with whatever they're doing on a Friday night engaged in a room, like, you could probably do a performing arts center.
Well, and I love that his big piece of advice is just get as much experience as you can, perform as much as you can. It speaks to Malcolm Gladwell's 10,000 hour rule, which is to truly gain mastery of anything, you need 10,000 hours in that field. And that plays, like in say the performing arts field, that includes your rehearsal time, your planning time, and your performance time, because all of those are preparation and are learning the experience and are learning what to go through, and just performing as much as you can, getting in front of as many people as you can, speaks to that 10,000 hours of mastery.
Just to go back to what Katie was saying before, because Jonathan mentioned NACA and the college circuit, and that's how, we talk about APAP, that's their APAP essentially. And it's for student activities primarily, booking shows for student populations, which I've been involved. I've been a university presenter at 2 different institutions now, but both of those jobs have been my goal or focus or mission has been to bring outside community, to serve the greater community and bring them onto campus. Whereas I had counterparts in the student activities offices that focus on the student population and bringing in artists for them. And they're the ones that go to NACA. The warning that I have, there are a good number of people, I'm talking about on the agency side, who do what we learned about in the Jerry Ross episode. They're buy-sell type people. And they take advantage of a lot of these student activity people that don't have the experience of working with agents directly or artists. And so they'll be paying like 2-3 times as much for the same artist, which the artist isn't getting that money. It's that buy-sell agent.
I'll say this industry-wide is like, I still get emails from those buy-sell agents. They'll send me an email and they'll list a ton of people. And once I start looking at it, I know the agent that actually represents those artists.
Mm-hmm.
And I can very quickly know at this point, okay, this is a buy-sell agent. That's not going to be my most cost-effective way of going about getting this artist. But there's a learning curve to that, because they'll present you with some artists that are really attractive from I could get that person here. But having the experience to know this person isn't the actual real go-to person for that. It's an interesting complexity of this industry that is something that you just have to learn through experience to be able to find.
And it's not just the artist fee too, because it translates to getting a proper writer. It gets, a lot of information they'll send you is not even accurate or correct because they're not actually interacting with the artist. It's just a warning for anyone that might be going into that side of the business. You just need to be aware of that.
Brian, I'd like to touch on a question that you asked in the interview, which I thought was a fantastic question, is how he figured out how to set up his fee and his writer whenever he was first starting out and getting going into that college circuit. And I thought that was a really important question from a development side for anybody listening to this that is an up and coming artist, as to how to establish yourself there. And so I thought it created some really good insight.
I appreciated his focus and recognition of starting early, not only like tying into the fact that it takes a lot of practice, but also recognizing that at that time in his life, like he didn't have a family, like he had the time he had, and honestly, like at that age, if it fails, like it's just you, like there's less at stake there. And just recognizing that, I thought was really great. And just also, sort of drives home some of the points that we often talk about here, is like, just sometimes you just need to do it, and go out there after it instead of waiting and trying to find that perfect moment, that perfect opportunity.
And so often whenever you're first starting out and so passionate, that is the right time. That's when you've got the fire. But at the same time, it has that balance of you don't have a mortgage and a family and a lot at risk. And so the risk versus reward is a much more simple equation.
Yeah, but also if you find yourself mid-career and you didn't do the thing, there's like a part of that conversation that sounds disheartening of like, well, if I haven't started, then I can't. As many times as you hear, well, it started early whenever I didn't have all these expenses and look where I am now. It's like you hear the same number of stories that are like, well, with the maturity that I have now that I didn't have, I was able to make whatever work. It worked for him. And I think that's a great way to prop up that example.
Yeah, no, that is a fantastic point, because you're right. You hear so many people who got their career started very late in life and obviously have been very successful as well.
Wherever you are, that support network or that support system is really key to success for artists, agents, whatever part of the industry that you're in. I really love that Jonathan's parents were really supportive from the get-go of him pursuing this.
And his Mima.
Yeah, and his grandmother. And I just think that's like a key to whether you're starting out very young or you're making a switch in the middle of your career or pursuing something new. Like, you have to have people in your corner, whether that's personally or professionally, working together, seeking out that support, like having those people that will back you no matter what, I think is one of the keys to this industry. And I think we've learned in other interviews that support has been really key to other people's success, and clearly key to Jonathan's success as well.
A quick inspirational message to anybody out there who's like playing with the idea of starting something new. Do it. Just do it. What, if there's anything that you see that's like the barrier to you jumping off that cliff and jumping into it, figure out why that barrier is there, or if that barrier is there for a certain reason, and how to get past it so that you can jump and pursue your passion. Because I mean, I'm mid-field, mid-career, and I'm finding new things to be passionate about all the time. And the biggest thing that I can say is just start, just do it.
So the other thing that I think we should go back to is that the network that you build is also something that you have in your toolbox. He would have never gotten his first start on Leno if a friend hadn't had that in and already knew him and knew that he would be a great person for that spot. And like so many of these things we've talked about, there's a way to look at that where it's like he was lucky, he was in the right place, he met the right person. But like he also worked really hard for a lot of years to build a network of fans as well as other magicians, going to magician conferences and being in the room and having relationships and talking to people. Like those things are all awesome things to carry with you in your toolbox. And I love that example because it's incredible.
And like, whenever he got that opportunity on TV, looking at just the boldness of when he was on Penn and Teller's Fool Us, to start just like, he had this random idea to pull wind chimes out from everywhere, and he had never done it before, and debuted it on television in the chance that is, his opportunity for a big break. He took a big chance and tried something brand new at that very moment, which was really amazing, but incredibly bold. And just, I applaud the courage to do that.
And what's funny is that wasn't an idea that just came to him. It was something that he had to come up with a solution for a problem, because the transitions were always done with popular music, which he couldn't use because of copyright reasons. And so that led to him just thinking creatively of ways to fill those spaces. And it became something that was just amazingly funny.
And now you know why you think you hear wind chimes in the room over when you're staying in a hotel. You don't never know who you're staying next to.
Well, and when he was telling that story, listening to it, I had that thought about like when you are put into a box, that is when you can be actually the most creative. When you have those limitations, those parameters put on you, that is sometimes when the most creativity comes and you can really have those moments of inspiration and brilliance. And so I was just thinking about like, what do we do now as we come out of pandemic and we've had all these restrictions, and like we looked at we saw the creativity that came out of that. So how do we continue that forward? And how do we not let these kind of limitations of audience return and marketing challenges and things like that set us back? But how do we like build on that and get more creative in this moment and keep that momentum moving forward?
Well, thank you all. I started this episode out by asking a question about bringing family and friends to work with you. And as you heard in the interview, Jonathan got a really amazing experience to bring his family and two young girls onto a Disney cruise with him while he worked on that. And I thought that was just like an amazing experience, I'm sure, for them. So thank you, Jonathan, for joining us on this episode. And thank you for tuning in. And we'll see you next time.
All right, everyone. Thanks for listening to There's No Business Like. Our producers and hosts are Brian Zelmer, Josh Benson, Kevin Maynard, Katie Miller, and me, Danielle Van Hook. Views expressed in this podcast are ours alone and are not reflective of the organizations we are a part of. Keep up with us at nobusinesslike.com. There you'll find links to all of our episodes and socials. If you like this podcast, give us a like, a follow, a review, or our favorite, a 5-star rating. Oh, wait, what was that site? I got it, don't worry. It is No, businesslife.com. Do I sound out bus-I-ness every time I type it? Yep, sure do. Stay in touch, my friends. But I was getting into my phone because I wanted to pull up this picture of my son being flexible. He did it a lot the other day. And then he kept wanting me to take more pictures.
He might be the next Jonathan Burns.
He was like, he might be. Like,
Wow, that's
he really likes to trick people.
Oh.
Oh gosh.